Hello, and thank you for joining us at Spark Niagara for HR for Startups. My name is Hope Tuffberg. I'm the Events and Marketing Coordinator here, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you HR strategist Madi Fuller, who will be facilitating our workshop here today.
Great, thanks, Hope. Thank you for everyone here that had come out today. Thank you for Spark Niagara for putting this on, and hi to everyone at home watching this as well. I believe that if you have any questions throughout, you can type it in as well. So feel free, if you have any questions or comments or want to be a part of the discussion, feel free to type in. So today we're going to be talking about HR. Obviously the underestimated value of a lot of startups. And a little bit of story that I had today, I went to a workshop today with a capitalist venture firm. So, they're giving startups, lots of money. And he put up a slide, and the number 2 problem that startups face is not having the right team in place and not hiring the right people to scale up. And afterwards I asked him, I'm like, how important is that really? Is that a stat that, that it's not really justified anywhere? He's like, no, 100%. When people show that they don't have a strong team in place, that's really negative, and usually they don't get the funding. So just keep that in mind. It always ties back to what startups really need, especially at the scale up stage, or even when you're hiring your first employee. Oh. One moment. There. Oh. Okay. So we're just going to do some introductions. I'll introduce myself a bit more, and then we can go around the group as well. I'll be talking about how HR is really changing in this day of age. Some quick one-on-one tips that every startup can take as well. Talking about your first hire, so how to effectively hire an employee. I won't get into the nitty-gritty because that could be an entirely different workshop, but just going over the strategic view that you should have when going into hiring your first employees. And then also talking about inclusion and diversity as well, and then some steps moving forward. So we'll do a little bit of an activity at the end where you guys can actually apply what we just talked about in this session to your startup. Great. So I know we chatted a bit before, but I'm Madi Fuller. I'm very passionate about human resources. I'm very passionate in entrepreneurship and startups. When I was a student at Brock, I took political science, which it's weird that it got me to this point. I started a few of my own companies there, and then from there I managed the on-campus Innovation and Accelerator program at Niagara College, and now I'm at the Regional Innovation Center in Hamilton. So one thing I realized working with startups, being on startups, is people really had no idea the operational human resources, tips they could take, but also the importance and the strategic value of HR. And I saw some really unfortunate mishaps by startups in terms of valuing their people and also getting the right people in place. And, I decided to go back to school and get my designation and certification in HR as well. So hopefully I can continue to start startups. So how about we go around who you are, what brought you here, what business or project or, general interest have you been working on, and what do you want to take from this workshop? We'll start here. You can do whatever you want. You can, yeah.
I'm Ryan Ross. I'm just a general contractor specializing in residential work, and what brought me here is I'm looking to do 1 to 2 hires in the new year.
Awesome.
And I'm too green to pass up any opportunity in this kind of setting.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. Okay, cool.
And my name is Carmen. I have a copywriting agency, and I'm here because I want to start outsourcing some of my work, so I want to learn how to hire people.
That's awesome.
As cool as that,
yeah, great.
I'm Dan Borick. I'm the founder of Two Marshmallows, been a member here at Spark since October, and I'm working on a digitally immersive language practice experience with K-12 students. So like you said, team has been my early pain early on, with a few technical folks, and I always like to support Spark events, so let it come out and hear you out and see what you have to say.
Yeah, for sure. Hope, why don't you tell us what you're working on?
My name is Hope Tuffberg. As previously mentioned, I'm the Events and Communications Coordinator here at Spark Niagara. I am currently a student at Brock University, also working on a not-for-profit that engages youth with their local communities and conflicts.
Dave, are you working on something?
Yeah, so I'm Dave. I work here at Spark as a manager. Thank you guys all for coming. Thank you, Madi, for presenting. I'm here too to learn more about HR. It's definitely an area I'm passionate and want to learn more about, and passionate about startups and business in Niagara.
just some questions again. This can just be popcorn style. You don't have to stand up. What was your first HR experience? So mine was working at a Tim Hortons in my first job, and that the manager or the supervisor at the time was HR. So they would deal with all the employees, acting inappropriately or being late on a shift, and it was something that you were kind of scared of HR. So what does HR mean to you now as well? Does anybody want to share?
The same thing.
Mhm.
It's first job, like at a restaurant, so same exact situation, but I would say HR probably just means like management, making sure everyone gets along together.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, for me, it's just exactly the same thing. Like, in my memory, it's working at a restaurant, you punch in card, punch out, so that's I still had those. But yeah, if you were in trouble, you would take it.
Yeah, no, exactly. So it's been known as somewhat of a negative thing. Like I remember growing up, my parents would like come home, and if they had a bad day at work, they'd be like, "Oh, HR," or "HR did this," or "HR did that." So it was something that was not that it wasn't justified, but it was always something negative about HR. So, oh. Oh, okay, one sec. Let me bring it back over. One sec, everyone. Where did I put it? Okay, there you go. No! Technology.
I'm not.
Are you not doing anything? Okay.
I'm just managing something else. There you go.
Okay, cool.
I think that cable's a little bit dodgy.
Okay, cool. So, so like I said, HR is really changing. So again, we have a lot of different sectors in here. So for example, in your sector, it is a little bit more formal. Like when people come into work, well, correct me if I'm wrong, they're going to be doing something, kind of similar every day. They have like their routine when they come in. One sec, I want to make sure that everyone's seeing this, so I want to set this up right. Let's see. Uh-oh. Is it on the live stream screen? Dave, I might need your help with this. Your computer's being a little bit weird. Oh, there you go.
Drag that and make it a big screen.
There you go. Okay. Okay, cool. I don't have it up on my screen, but it's okay. So like I said, obviously, like we've known it a lot as formalities, structures, rules, corporate. It's something that startups, it's usually not what you think about when you think of startups. Because with startups, it's something flexible. You constantly have to be adapting to the environment around you. You don't really have time for HR to pop their head in and be like, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. It's going to take, weeks to get some sort of structure in place for it. But now people are really looking at HR on how to maximize maximize the use of the talent in your company. So you're making sure that the work environment, like someone said, it's a work environment that's open and friendly. And so number one, it retains your employees as well and helps them leave, work happy every single day. And it helps them expand their career as well. So there's two kinds of HR. Again, this is just kind of a debrief of what kind of the view I'm coming from of what HR is really about. So there's operational HR and there's strategic HR. So who has someone that's on payroll right now? Do you have anyone that's on payroll right now?
No.
Okay, so that's what you'd be like. Okay, so operational is when you're looking at payroll. So how people are getting paid. Operational is like policies. So what policies do you have in place? Do you have an employee handbook in place? Do you kind of have even a culture handbook in place? It's the written documentation. It's the even onboarding, all the data that comes with that. What kind of people are applying to your jobs? Who are you taking? How are you getting them to fill out the paperwork and get them in your system? And then there's strategic as well. So the strategic focus is succession planning. So for example, when you hire on your first couple people, you may know that, you know, their span is 5 years. So what can you teach them in that 5 years that will then help when the next person comes in successfully do their job? So you're thinking strategic, view into the future, strategic even within the week. You're looking at how it impacts your business operations in general, not just within the HR department. But an important thing to note is you need sound operational practice. So you need all the policies and you need all the, the payroll that is, actually depositing money into your employees' bank accounts. That needs to be in place to support a strong strategic vision. So with that being said, HR really becomes a strategic asset for companies that want to move with flexibility, move quickly, like a lot of you guys want to in your growing stages in startups. So, does anyone know, can anyone think of any external factors that impact their startup? Like for example, in the ed tech, what external factors are impacting your startup?
Well, political decisions,
Mm-hmm.
regulations, so for example, cuts to funding. I mean, in my case, I could argue that helps it because if there's less resources, then you might be turning more things, but that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And what would impact yours?
It's really just a general strength of the economy. I'm not doing new builds or large-scale projects. I'm not relying on a huge government boost or huge subsidized housing or any kind of huge project like that. So it's really kind of a general health and willingness to invest in property.
And what would like the digital creative space
Yeah,
be?
it must be like marketing trends. I said
Yeah.
the big thing. If like the trends are changing, then like what service you offer might not be as valuable, and then you have less clients or something.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So with HR strategy, you're really trying to get the right employees in to navigate the complex and dynamic environments that you guys are in. So you guys mentioned this, it's the external environment like the government. It's also like the area that we're in as well. So in Niagara, we were just saying, Niagara does not have a lot of creative industry. It doesn't have that big of a creative industry compared to Hamilton or Toronto. So will that impact also the candidate pool that you may have? Like, are people graduating in it? Are there people that are skilled in creative arts? For example, are there people that are still, in the trades as well, or are the number of people in trades declining? So it's kind of like looking at your particular, especially looking at Niagara in like a smaller level, but then also the grander level of what's happening provincially or even nationally, or depending on how big your company's going, and then comparing that to the needed skills and capabilities. So again, even you guys knowing the external environment factors that are impacting your company is showing that you guys think strategically, but also that you can tie that into, okay, in a year, that would be a good time for me to hire someone. For example, you said in the new year, you'd like to hire someone. Like, that's like a great strategic thinking. So yeah, just going forward, that's just what we'll be talking about, is looking at that kind of those steps and those one-on-one tips as a strategic asset. Great. So just some HR views. So when you're building your strategy, so there's a few perspectives. So there's a traditional perspective. So that kind of goes from the HR flows from the corporate strategy. So, you have the top people creating the business plan, and the HR just fills those gaps. Like, they just get directives and fill them. And then you have the human capital focus. So a company can't implement a strategy without like the human capital necessary, obviously. But those are originally those two kind of realms that companies typically go for. But in the past couple years, the ideal approach would be a reciprocal interdependence. So that means that essentially, if you have your business plan out on a table, you should be able to take an HR plan and seamlessly put it over that business plan. So how many people have like a written business plan out? Okay. I mean, yours is a little bit different because it's your specific area, and it's like niche in the sense of like what you need to do because you've been doing it. But a business plan should always have that overlay of an additional HR strategy. And again, I would suggest like any business have even like a lean canvas business model. And again, this way that you're capitalizing, like your company is developing its employees and capitalizing on those skills, and then your employees are also developing great skills that are then being put back into the company. So it's like an ever turning kind of cycle. And again, an HR, like obviously you guys don't have a big enough team right now to hire on an HR person to just like build an HR plan. So that's typically when like an independent HR individual would come in and kind of look over your business plan and look over how your company is working, and then place that HR plan right over that. Great. So now that we're kind of seeing this as like as a strategic asset rather than an operational asset, and that's it, there's a couple starting up HR one-on-ones that I'd just like to go over with you guys. So training employees. So usually onboarding, I don't know if you guys have ever onboarded a new employee before, even in like your first job as a teenager, you train the new cashier or whatever. Onboarding takes a lot of money and a lot of time. So it's really good not to take that for granted. It's really good to get it right the first time. So usually in startups or small businesses to medium-sized businesses, your first couple employees, they really become generalists, because they're the first people that are like your right-hand person to you, and they really need to be involved in many different areas of the business. Like they're not just going to be marketing. Like when I worked at a startup, I went in and I was, doing marketing, operational stuff, doing sales. It's a little bit of everything. So it's really good when you hire your first couple of people, you need to spend, I would personally recommend like half a week on onboarding in a formal training setting, and then the last half of the first week go into something more informal or in job. So for example, your industry would be perfect to show them, like that's a really hands-on thing. Like they're not going to learn how to do a certain task just by being told that. Like that would be a good opportunity to take them in the field and do that. But again, like new employees commonly find themselves in management positions, and we probably all know this, not everyone could be a manager. Like there's some people where you're like, how the heck did you become a manager? It literally seems like you were given this role your second day on the job. So it's really important to, for your business sake, so, a couple months in, the employees and coming up to you and being like, I'm leaving because instead of learning new things, I'm trying to figure it out myself, and B, it helps your company not lose a new employee and have to onboard someone all over again. So this first welcome to the company is a really good way to get rid of that generalist syndrome, as I call it, right away. And make use of this Renaissance employee who may be talented enough to do every task, but they definitely need the support. So I'm going to focus a lot on company culture. We're going to do a lot of kind of brainstorming about this at the end, because I think this is really important. Before you even hire your first employee, you should have a really good grasp. Like you have a good grasp on what kind of services or what kind of product you want to bring to the market, you should have a good grasp on what's the kind of culture you want to provide yourself, but also to employees that are, took a chance to be employed by you, pretty much. So in a Deloitte study, it cited that 87% of organizations, small, medium-sized organizations, cite that culture and engagement is one of their top challenges. So I don't know if anyone has been in an organization that, you go to it and you're like, and you leave and you just feel like a bag of garbage afterwards. You're just like, oh my gosh, that's, it's toxic, it's a bad culture. Even like that Timmy's job, like of course, like it's your first job, so it was a good taste at bad culture. But even after that, you're like, people are yelling at each other, people are, not supporting, people aren't friends, people aren't eating lunch with each other. That really small stuff that a lot of companies take for granted of, it's good to get right, your very first hire. So a strong culture leads to a great, a strong brand and a great employer brand as well. Because when people are having fun having fun at work and they're enjoying going in, they're going to tell their friends. And when another job posting comes up, you're going to be seeing increasingly better and better candidates come through. And a lot of companies kind of allow their company culture to form their own. Kind of like if you know your brand really well, you'd be like, okay, well, whatever, like, my brand is this, so my culture is just going to naturally form into that. Trust me, it will not. I have seen enough startups where a lot of the times they're like, our mission and our values is what our culture is, and people should just know that. People don't just know that. So you really have to formalize it as much as a startup can, and really focus on that, because it can get really, really toxic quickly. Yeah, so again, a lot of people are probably like, what is culture? And this is kind of like the formula that Alfred Lin, who is the COO and chairman of Zappos. So Zappos is like the Amazon for shoes. So they used to put a whole bunch of different like work shoes, like loafers, everything on a site. So every day, the values and actions of each member of the team is in pursuit of our company mission. So these are the kind of questions that he suggests you ask yourself when you're trying to form that culture. So as the leader, what personal values are most important to you? What are the most important values for business success? What values would you look in for employees? What could never be tolerated? So the opposite of the prior questions. And do you remember to incorporate your mission in your core value? So I'll just pose the question quickly. What personal values are most important to you? Just in life in general. Like if you were like, selecting friends. What are the most important values to you?
Positivity, honesty.
Yeah, those are good ones.
I'd say authenticity, not faking it, just who you are. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, that's a good one. Dave?
I just, you said a positive outlook, perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, another vote for positivity.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. Okay. Yeah, and again, like you almost have to write. So the founder of Airbnb, Brian Chesky, he actually pretty much wrote like a culture manifesto. So he like wrote out exactly, like you can find it online, like it's hundreds of pages, and he wrote out exactly what he wants his culture to be. And he actually took 4 months to hire his very first engineer. He got thousands of resumes, interviewed hundreds of people, and that's kind of what he was thinking, is like, what are the values for myself, and who do I think would positively contribute to the company, but also build on what our culture and what our values are as well. And he says, and he quotes, I think bringing in your first engineer or employee or contractor or whatever is like bringing in a DNA chip to your company, especially when it's even the first to like the 50th employee. So if you look at Google's culture, they have a core set of culture values. So it's kind of similar to what we were just talking about. So it was openness, innovation, excellence that comes with smartness, hands-on approach, and small company family rapport. So they tie all of their culture values directly to their product development and their business processes. So when they're trying to think of a new, something to add, when they're thinking of the Google Home, that was something that they wanted to incorporate, what people live by every day when they go onto like that big, huge Google campus, and how they incorporate that into their product. So it's like a living, image of what it is. So I'll just play this quick video from Google. Oh, wait. I just want to make sure the sound plays.
Is that I just fell in love with the culture. I fell in love with it. It was just the vibe that I wanted to be a part of.
It's just some place where I can never imagine myself getting bored, because we're thinking about billions of users, and so that's a lot of impact that you can have, and it's just really gratifying.
Google is so much at the forefront of technology, and the way that our culture is built, we are always looking for the tenets. We are always looking for the leapfrog innovation.
So you have to be willing to let all your preconceived notions be broken at any moment. You're gonna have to make your own rules sometimes, and this is actually part of the fun.
I get to try new technologies. I get to implement them in different ways that maybe no other company has done them before. And so you can really go beyond your skill set that you think you have at the moment and push the boundaries.
The part that makes it really fun is there are so many teams across Google that have amazing expertise. And I get to work with these people, not only build something with them, but I learn so much. Pick any topic, and I can promise you there's someone here who is both better at it than you, or more knowledgeable, and also more importantly, willing to help you learn.
Everybody here is so nice. They're so encouraging. So that's very reassuring to be in a company where people value you.
I am
fortunate enough to work with people from a lot of different experiences, a lot of different backgrounds, and we use that in our advantage.
It's really the best idea when there's a lot of debate, but it's really to bring those different viewpoints together, and that's what we want our products to represent.
We believe the benefits of technology should apply to all, and that's a mission that really is very, very inspiring.
So when I show up at work, I'm able to do all the things that I love, solving hard problems and working for the people that I manage. That makes it worthwhile for me to show up every day.
Who wants to work at Google now? So yeah, as you can see, every main word I said, and then everything that everyone else said, like, you know, they can work on projects as they, not as they want, but like in their kind of day to day, they're working on projects, they're tinkering away, they're trying to continuously innovate, and that's why they were hired to work at Google as an engineer, as a sales, as a product manager. So again, culture is one of those things that as a startup or as a small to medium-sized business, like you're constantly trying to like fit in like a week's work into one day. But with culture and as a whole, like building an HR strategy and hiring your first employee, that definitely takes time and definitely takes deliberate action rather than just letting, you know, the first couple of employees you hired like grow the culture for you. They might be awesome people, but it is good to set kind of that formality when you're hiring people so they know what they're getting into when they join your company. Awesome. So the next one is employee and morale retention. So obviously the company culture feeds directly into employee morale and retention. But one thing I think about that when I think of employee morale and retention is definitely work-life balance. So a lot of the times the stigma around startups I find is that all startups or small businesses, you're putting in like 12-hour days and people are constantly, you know, at the office, they're coming in on weekends, they're missing important family milestones. But it's important to remember like that does sometimes come true, and it's really important to give employees, you know, work-life balance. You have to make sure that they're heard as well. So for example, having, like I've worked for companies where you have one-on-ones with employees bi-weekly. So, you know, every Tuesday morning at 9, you grab a coffee and you just say, okay, what are you working on for the next 2 weeks? Where can I help you? What kind of issues or what kind of even wins have you gotten? I know some people that do stand-ups like every day. That's a bit much. So I would definitely put it like bi-weekly, but just making sure, like, think of the best workplace you ever worked in and think of kind of that feeling that you felt of, you know, being heard, of being valued, that they made sure that the purpose that you had in your career is the purpose that, you know, you had in that company as well. So Chris Chung, who's is the founder of Republic Wireless. He talks about work-life balance, and I found this really interesting because a lot of the times people, when they first start join your company, they want to impress. You know, they are going to do whatever you say and more because they want to impress. So he actually suggests to actually practice workplace flexibility. So for example, if it's a Friday and you know that you want to leave at, you know, 2:30 because you're going up to a cottage, you know, suggest to your employee, hey, maybe you should like check out for the weekend. So you're actually practicing kind of suggesting that work-life balance. Maybe you're going for a run in the middle of the day, like that's the only time you could get in, so you're heading out for a quick hour. Suggest that maybe, you know, they go read a book for an hour, or go for a walk for an hour. So really practicing that workplace flexibility and demonstrating it in your own life, because we know it's important, even if you are the founder of a company, it is important to prioritize that yourself. And then also ditch unnecessary perks as well. So this may not apply to anyone here, but I found this extremely interesting. But a lot of times, you know, the Googles and the Apples and the Amazons, they have free dinner for people every night. They're getting people to go on retreats every weekend, you know, a lot of additional perks. But in the meantime, like, wouldn't you rather your employee get home to spend time with their family at dinner? Like, there shouldn't be a pressure in the culture to stay, you know, extra for dinner when they could be spending that time at home or with friends. So just being aware that, like, people's lives, yes, when they're at work, they should be passionate about their work, but their life shouldn't revolve around their work. So just keeping that in mind. And then also, when you kind of, have your first couple employees for a while, this is a little matrix that I've heard of a couple times, but it goes high talent, high trouble, medium trouble, low talent, low trouble. So that kind of looks at, obviously, high talent is someone who's super high performance. They had a great resume, they were a great hire, they had really great skills, but high trouble is that, the next job offer, they're not very, I wouldn't say loyal, but they're high trouble because they have opportunities everywhere. Like they see this and they're going to apply to that because they can't sit still. So maybe it's a little bit of a loyalty thing, but they can't sit still and they'll go like the next opportunity they have. And then medium talent, obviously, is just like, meh. And then low talent is, okay, why did you hire this person? And then obviously, self-explanatory, medium trouble is that, they're happy where they are. Obviously, if they care about their career advancement, that they will move on. And then low trouble is, kind of what I've heard described. It's kind of like apathetic, like they'll come to work, and even if they are really talented, it's just like, it's a job. Like, I'm definitely not going anywhere because I don't really believe in professional development. So the really sweet spot for retaining employees, and again, a lot of you guys probably won't experience this for, a year or so once you hire your first employees, but it's definitely high talent, medium trouble is kind of like the sweet spot there. So again, this is kind of a matrix that can be referred back to when, you're seeing maybe some more employees come in, there's some turnover happening, and kind of placing where each employee kind of is in this matrix. So the next one is policies. So this one, obviously, a lot of people who wouldn't have any clue on how to write like a policy pertaining to HR. Okay, so obviously the reason why people suggest that you write out policies, especially for the construction kind of industry, is because obviously there's a lot of like health and safety regulations with that when you hire people in, and we can talk about that further later. But you want to create policies to address problems before they even happen. So an example of a really good policy is like an employment code of conduct or employee handbook. So this covers things that are actually covered in the employment standards Ontario document that you can find online, but it addresses policies like, the minimum amount of vacation days people can have, the minimum amount of sick days people can have, just like the data, their work hours every day, maybe even your work from home policy, dress code, accessibility policy that you have to have in every single contract, social media policy, hours of, like I said, vacation overtime, leaves of absence, anti-discrimination, drug and alcohol policy, termination of employment, so showing like if you do this, this, and this, we can justly terminate you. We can also terminate you if we give you, a 2-week notice, depending on how long they've been working for. So everything in this employment policy. Again, we can, if you want further information about it, I'm not going to go into the super nitty-gritty about it because, again, it could be a whole entire workshop. I would be happy to talk to you guys offline about that if you'd like something put together for an employment policy book. But when you hire someone and you have this ready, you get them to sign it because they're kind of signing it that they agreed to it. So if anything else comes up, let's just say someone got a new job offer and, they're giving in, a week notice. In that contract, you can actually put, you have to formally give in 2 weeks notice before you go. And then you can refer that back and be like, you acknowledge this, you signed this, we have to stay true to this, you need a full 2 weeks notice for that. So simple things like that, it's kind of covering your butt, but it also sets out exactly what the employees need to know about their employment as well for that duration. So again, if it's a contract as well, in that, actually we'll talk about that when I talk about hiring someone new. You can have that documentation is really important too, that offer letter and that contract letter as well. So this is a kind of a tricky one, but this is something important because if you are the owner of a business, you are going to be the one that is going to maybe, unfortunately, fortunately, sometimes terminate employees as well. So it's really important to kind of understand this perspective on termination. So I'll tell a little story, and who here has been, be honest, no one will see you on screen. Who here has been fired? Be honest. No one? Yeah, it's not that common. I haven't met that many people that got fired. I feel like you have to do a lot to get fired these days. But I'll tell a story about my friend that got fired. So they were working for a startup, And again, like we were just saying, finding purpose in your workplace, especially in a new company, is very important to the employee and the person that is employing you. So they were realizing they weren't being challenged, they didn't feel listened, they completely shut down. They would come in every day, do different work, do different work, not that they would sass people around them, but they were really disconnected. And one day the boss calls them in and they go, like, it's not you, it's us. Like, this isn't going to work out. We're obviously not driving right now. It's probably best that we, let you go. And it was probably the best thing to happen for the company in that particular time to move forward with another candidate and to shape that position that they were in properly. And then obviously for that individual to get an even better job that, they find. So people think that, termination with a startup in small businesses is a very negative thing. Obviously in nature it is. Someone will have to go find a new job and you will have to find a new employee. But in the long term, keeping toxic employees is negative for your company and your profitability and your productivity and for that employee as well. Because when they're just staying there as like kind of a, maybe not a safety net, but if they're just staying there as a comfort thing, it really helps them, kind of realize what they want, what they need in a career, and they can move forward. Obviously, there are legal obligations. You have to give them proper notice. You'll have to give them a severance package depending on how long they've worked there for. But again, I can explain that to all of you if you ever have to fire someone. But for now, just kind of changing the perspective of how to terminate someone and kind of realize when someone loses interest, there's no problem with properly and legally terminating that and giving them some advice as well. I'm just saying what went wrong with that. And then hiring feasibility. So it seems like a lot of you guys might be in this stage in the next couple months, like you said, to hire someone. But it is really important to ask, like, will you be a living wage employer? It's really important to kind of assess the market, assess your profitability, and you say, what in Niagara, for example, what is the living wage? What can I pay someone that they're not going to be, necessarily living paycheck to paycheck? And what can I afford at this moment? Just so you kind of know, set the baseline of what kind of employee you want. Do you just need part-time help right now based on the budget you may have for a new employee? But really, have an honest conversation of, is this feasible for me? And will this be feasible for the potential candidate as well? Awesome. So now we're going to talk a bit about hiring your first hire and some things to think about and some formalities or just some like tips that you can follow. So who has made a bad hire? Has anyone made a bad hire?
I have with like a virtual assistant before, because they were from like the Philippines, and English wasn't their first language, but
time difference, all that stuff. Yeah.
It wasn't too bad, but it was enough to learn from it.
Yeah. At Niagara College, I had interns, and they just did it as part of their program. And even with that, I was like, I probably could have vetted that one a bit more. Just a general, passion for just like working and putting in some effort into it. Who has been a bad hire? I put this because I can 100% admit that I have been a bad hire before. I worked for a startup, and I was given the role because they knew me from somewhere, and I was 100% a bad hire. I didn't know the role. I didn't know what was expected from me from the role. A bit of my fault and maybe a bit of the employer's fault. But I can say, looking back on it, taught me a lot of like what I would want, looking for a future employee, of making sure that just because you know them, they don't get brought in. But again, it was humbling to say like, yeah, I've been a totally bad hire, and that's okay. That's okay. But So again, a lot of people sometimes wonder like, when should I hire? So what made you like kind of decide that you wanted to hire?
It comes a level of productivity that comes from, for lack of a better term, being able to outsource more menial work, perhaps more entry level.
Yeah. So you're spending too much time on things you shouldn't be doing.
And also, there are jobs that just require 2 sets of hands, 2 sets of eyes.
Yeah.
And they're both regarded as equal contributors.
Mm-hmm. No, that's awesome to know. And again, it always ties back to strategy as well. So you've been scanning your company to see if an additional body is needed, and you're kind of aware of, I'm probably going to see more jobs coming up. I may see a decrease of jobs here, but regardless, I need extra hands to help me, and then also extra hands for things that maybe I should pass off on this at this time. So again, as a lot of times, founders and co-founders of startups, they have a difficult time like kind of letting go of their original, expertise in a company. Like, for example, if a really sales-driven co-founder is realizing that maybe he shouldn't be going to all, the sales call and should be focusing on the strategic level, that can be hard to let go, but it's really important for co-founders and founders to, realize that maybe you shouldn't be dealing one-on-one with customers online. Maybe you should get a customer success manager. Maybe you shouldn't be writing the Facebook post. Maybe you should get even like a university or college student to help you out with that. So just constantly scanning. So who knows what's your target customer? Has everyone decided what their target customer is? Yeah, pretend that says customer.
Yes.
What's your target customer?
It'd be teachers, educators, parents, and then eventually schools, and then down the road, governments.
Hope, what's your target customer?
My target customer would be similarly educators, teachers, administrators who have power and authority to administrate similar programs to students.
Awesome. Do you have a target customer?
Yeah, more or less. I'd say mid to high income homeowner. Yeah. Although my overhead is so low right now that the work I can do can be done really in any bracket.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have a target customer?
Yeah, for me, it's mostly like VPs of marketing or like CMOs in a 7-8 figure B2B agency. It's mostly who I work with and talk to.
Awesome. So you guys kind of have like that persona in your mind. So like the income, maybe it's like the student, so like for the student aspect, the student that's engaged or a student that's politically active or not politically active. So you guys all, when you started your company, you're like, okay, I have this ideal customer and that's who my target customer is. So I challenge you guys as you move forward, think of your target employee the same way. So when you think of all of the kind of thinking and brainstorming and that changed the nature of your business as well when you decided your target customer, really think about who your target employee is. When you think of when you're about to hire, it should be the same kind of, not preciseness, but the same thought should go behind what experience, what skills, what kind of attitude should this employee be? And then you can kind of go from there of where you will find this target employee as well. So step number 1, when you're kind of looking for this, and this forms your job description that you would put out on, LinkedIn, Indeed, maybe, I don't know if like places like Fiverr and online places have like a job description area, but whatever, we'll get into where you can post it. But you ask yourself, what is needed from this role? What are the KSAOs? So KSAOs is knowledge, skill, abilities, and other characteristics like soft skills and like designations. For example, if you want them to have some sort of background designation in HR or project management or whatever. So how important is educational requirements? Is it important that this person has post-secondary, university, college, a particular, for example, I did my my certification in HR. How important is experience? Are you looking for 5 years of experience? Are you looking for 10? Are you looking for, someone that may just have like a summer experience, like a summer of experience, for example? And how important is soft skills? So who here knows, who here knows what soft skills are compared to hard skills? Okay, what are soft skills?
Well, soft skills are like communication skills and stuff like that versus something hard, like technical skills and knowing that programming.
So for example, maybe for copyright, like some hard skills is like you can work Word, you know how to like technically write something, you have good grammar. But soft skills may be like creativity, communication. You can like portray an idea very well. Positivity could totally be a soft skill. You know, communication both orally as well, so customer service, so they're able to work with the customers. Like if you're going into someone's home, they're going to be friendly and they're going to be able to work with someone. So how important are soft skills? Because some people purely hire just on soft skills. So again, these kind of areas really build up your job description as well. And again, I can show you guys an example of job description too, but this will build the bulk of, just so when someone reads this, they can be like, you know, check, I have that. I don't have that. Check, I have that. And then it kind of lays the groundwork of what you are finding important as well. So, where to post posting? So the question again is, where will you find your ideal customer? So if you are hiring, let's just say VP of marketing, you're not going to post on Indeed, for example. You're probably going to post on LinkedIn, because that's where a lot of VP of, it's like when you're trying to target your customers, like they're on LinkedIn. If you're looking for someone who maybe is entry level, has some experience working in the contractor or construction area, you might post on Indeed, for example, because a lot of those people that are looking to get into that area, they may be on Indeed, they may be on Glassdoor, they may be on Monster, things that, because LinkedIn is more for the business sector rather than the construction sector. So you would kind of decipher accordingly and kind of see where you were. And then word of mouth / referral. So I have a little bit of beef kind of with word of mouth. Word of mouth can be awesome when you're building it, because you're, you know, someone that you trust, let's just say a friend or someone that you used to work with, could be like, hey, I have someone that's great, like I'm going to refer them over. Obviously, people aren't going to refer over someone that is going to embarrass them when they get into your work. But the other thing of word of mouth referral, it really bottlenecks your hiring process. It doesn't really open up to much diversity. Diversity in the sense of demographics, but also experience, skills, and ideas. You're kind of staying within the same circle that, you know, you're currently in, instead of like breaking on, you know, there could be someone totally awesome that just needs a shot somewhere that you may not even be open to because you got it from someone else. Again, I think that it can be really beneficial at times for startups if you're trying to hire quickly, so you kind of have a reference right away, someone's referring you. But just take it with a grain of salt and always have an equal number of people applying from, you know, independent sources, like is someone seeing the posting, compared to people bringing you references as well. It's good. And like I said, is this good on LinkedIn? Again, LinkedIn has a great system of posting stuff. Same with Indeed as well, making sure everything is very easy for you to fill out, that you hardly need a job description unless you have it on your website. Magnet is a new one. So Magnet is similar to LinkedIn's, a combination of LinkedIn, Indeed, where you put in what the position is, the education that's needed, the skills that are needed, and you can filter it. So in Indeed, you could get thousands of resumes. Depending on the posting, you could get hundreds of resumes coming in. But with Magnet, it's very specified, so it only shows up in people's like job board if they match a certain amount of skill. So that's a really cool new one. Indeed, again, is awesome. I really suggest, if you're going to post something on Indeed, watch some of the tutorials they have on there. They actually came and spoke at Niagara College one year, and I was shocked at some of the capabilities that people can use and some of the filters that people can use on Indeed, so you're not getting hundreds of postings. And then like tech job boards. So for example, if you need some sort of development employee, it may be beneficial for you to go directly to like a tech job board. I know Hamilton has one where you can post tech related jobs right on there. And then also post-secondary institution. So what school, did you go to Brock? Oh, I'm joking. You went to Niagara College. Did you go to any post-secondary?
Yeah, in a totally different path. I went to Northeastern University.
Oh, okay, very cool. For what?
For criminal justice.
Whoa, very cool. Well, again, so you guys know, regardless of what university you went to, people always used to come to campus and kind of say, hey, we got like summer jobs, we have new grad programs. And I really think that Niagara is a great community for companies to utilize their students. Niagara is really pushing for students of Niagara College and Brock to stay in Niagara, because a lot of them, you know, I'm from Durham region, I stayed some people just go home because they live in the GTA and they can get better jobs. So making sure that you're known to the Brock and Niagara College students, and a lot of times the only skills those students don't have are hard technical skills, which is something that is easier to train than soft skills. A lot of them have been in classes where, you know, they have to present, they have deadlines to meet, they have to be organized, they have 5 classes on their, 5 classes, a part-time job. A lot of them have the soft skills and kind of the passion and the enthusiasm, but need that kind of chance to get in there. So I would never, and plus there's a lot of great co-op job opportunities through Brock, internship opportunities through Niagara College, where you can get 300 hours of someone's time and you can set, you know, a project to them. So don't underestimate how important, you know, working with, again, and those college and universities are open to working with people as well, and connecting you with students that would be beneficial for you. So resumes, so as you can see, I love Google. So Google says you should look for 3 things when you're looking at a resume. And one question I'll ask before, who thinks they have a great resume? So my number one tip for when you get a resume, if I asked you to write a resume right now and you were like, I highly recommend you go to a resume one-on-one writing class. Again, I could do a full workshop on how to write a resume as well, but I would go to a resume writing workshop so you know, because they're showing you exactly what a good resume looks like. Because when you go to that, A, you'll be able to put together a nice resume for yourself, and B, you know exactly the different formalities that are supposed to be there, what the best practice is. I mean, I bet I'll get into that a bit now, but you'll be able to see examples of what a professional resume should look like, and you can apply it right there. Because I know some people that have never written a resume before, and I'm like, how will you even know what a good resume looks like? So you should look for polished application. So obviously, no spelling mistakes, no grammar. I mean, I'm usually not a complete stickler on it because you never know what's going on in someone's life that they didn't have time to look over it. But details is a really good test at attention to detail for the employee. You want to look for quantifiable impact, contribution, or accomplishments. So again, people should be showing you, if they had an increase in sales, or if they were able to work with this many customers in this set time, or they were able to work with this many companies in this set time, if they have academic awards. So you want to see definitive and measured experiences on their resume. And finally, you want a clean timeline of employment as well. Though I do want to note that gaps in an employment history shouldn't be a deal breaker either, because a lot of times individuals are unfairly stigmatized for having gaps in their resume, because it kind of shows, they've been jobless for a while, when in reality it could be, they had a child during that time, they took a couple years off, they might have went back to school, they might have just had, life might have just happened and they didn't have a job for a while. But again, you kind of want to look for that consistency of, even like an advancement of responsibilities from one job to another, so it's kind of showing that they've advanced positions. So step 4, interviewing. So who has interviewed someone? Okay. And who here thinks they're good at interviews? I love interviewing. So there's a couple different kinds of interviews that you guys can do with people. And obviously, as you see, unstructured is less than structured, not as good as structured. So unstructured is when you just bring them in and have a conversation with them. You have no questions set out. You're just kind of being like, hey, tell me about yourself. Why do you want this job? Just, free flowing, which is fine, but I would highly suggest a structured interview, So that's when you have a set number of questions set out, which is the same for every single candidate that's coming in. So that way you're able to, quantify what they're saying, measure it against everyone else, and also you're not gonna, you're getting the best out of your time and their time as well. There's 2 types of really effective questions you can ask in interviews as well. So there's behavioral and situational. So behavioral is when, usually when you're trying to trace back to someone's past experience, so you'll say something like, in the past, if you were working with a difficult customer, what did you do to resolve that, and what were the results of that, and would you do anything differently? So it's tracing back, it's kind of like that STAR model is what we call it. So you're looking at, timeline, you're looking at results, and you're looking at kind of like the aftermath of that. So again, that's something when they have experience. And if you're interviewing, let's just say a new grad or a student or someone that doesn't have that much experience, you can still ask them a situational question. So a situational question is something, very specific to what their job is going to be. So let's just say they're a developer. You would say, okay, so if you're in a position where you had juggling deadlines, how would you deal with that? So it's something that they may not have experiences in, but you'd be able to see, hypothetically what they would do, especially trying to connect those to their job, the job tasks that they would have in that position in your company. So this might be a big claim, so if anyone wants to disagree with me, you can disagree with me. But again, as I was saying, experience is important. Experience is important. But some of my biggest breaks in my career have been because people have seen passion, they've seen that I'm curious about their company, they've seen that I'm adaptable in, in organizations that need to be adaptable in, and I have a personal growth mindset. So when you're interviewing someone, look for those characteristics. Of course, I'm not saying ignore their resume, don't even look at their experience, but that should really be weighted differently when they come in and, they've done their research on the company, they're passionate about the trade or in the particular service that they would be doing, and they want to grow in their company. Because again, they can have like all the experience in the world, but if they, they come in, they're just like, hey, like cool, like, they have no enthusiasm, they can't keep a conversation going. Like that really shows you that, I need someone that's passionate about the cause or the, the services that we're trying to provide the market, and we need someone that will grow as well. Sorry for that typo in there. And as you go through interviews, also don't settle too quickly, because I have interviewed people in the past where, they come in, I'm like, oh my gosh, they were amazing. I should just give them the position. They're awesome. But the thing is, you have to have a lot of conversations with different people, regardless of the position, and because it's really difficult to judge a candidate if you don't have anyone to compare them against as well. So make sure you're going through them. And also once you've narrowed down the list, again, I don't know how much you could do this in kind of the construction industry, but always have applicants. Once you've narrowed it down to maybe like 3 applicants, 5 applicants, depending on how big the pool is, get them to demonstrate a skill or some sort of task that they would be doing in the actual role. Because a lot of times people can totally BS in interviews. They can totally, people aren't good at interviews. Like some people go in there and wow you. And I think it's first off impressive when a company asks me to do an additional task, because it shows that they care about what kind of people they're bringing into their company. It also helps you, kind of weed out to actually reach the candidate that you're going to select. So for example, in a job interview I recently had, I had to do a 30, 60, 90-day plan for the program I'd be managing. So it was intense. I took like a week to prepare this presentation. I did it in front of like a room similar to this size. I presented it, and I was like, wow, like that's kind of prepared me for the job. But again, maybe it's, for copyright, it's like here's a product, write out like 5 taglines. Or if it's a code, like here, write out this line of code, or create a marketing campaign for our product. So it's something hands-on, and give them like a week, give them some time to do it, because then again, you are confident that you're making the right decision as well. Awesome. So once you have narrowed it down, a lot of times startups, like they love to promise the moon to candidates. They'll say, you're going to have all the flexibility in the world. You can come in whenever you want. Here's this, this is how much we think we can pay you, because, the classic line, because a grant's coming in, we can pay you this much, but until that grant's in the bank, or, you have the money in the bank, you really have to be realistic about the salary. You have to be realistic about the benefits they're going to be looking at, because you're really working with people's livelihoods with this. They've accepted the job, they're putting their time into the process. So really, being realistic, and also be setting realistic expectations for the future. And there's really no harm in saying, if you know that the startup life or the small to medium-sized life is hectic, like say that. You just be like, you know, this is a hectic environment. Like it's fun and you'll learn a lot, but like we're going to need adaptability, and we're going to need someone that is willing to, you know, not carry their own weight, but being able to learn quickly. We want someone that is, you know, willing to take part of this grind on to day to day, and then also ensure proper documentation prior to their first day. So some people get people to sign their contract like the day, their first day. Don't do that. Send it to them, give them some time to read over it. If they have any questions, they can, and then they can sign it, and they've accepted to, you know, what's pertaining in the contract, what's pertaining in the employment manual, and then you'll feel more confident when they come into their first day and you're ready to go, and you don't have to worry about any last minute things they may have questions about. So really interesting kind of approach on hiring as well, additional. So this kind of idea is by Adam Grant, who's one of my favorite authors and professor. He's so awesome. So he talks a lot about pretty much like how to build an effective team, but how to be your best self at work as well, but from a very psychological mind. He's a psych prof in the States somewhere. So he interviewed 200 founders in Silicon Valley, and he found that there was 3 main approaches to hiring that they have. So it's all about hiring on skills. So every single thing that the job description has, this person hits in terms of, you know, the skills they need, the education they needed, the experience they needed. And then it's all about the next one, they focus a lot about talent. So a lot of times these people have raw talent. Like they come in the interview and they're like insane. Like you walk on and you're like, where did this person come from? Like they're actually like they're you know, they're hustlers, they're, you know, they'll get work done. And then other people simply hire for culture fit. So like they'll bring this person in and they'll be like, hey, you like it'll be great, you know, they might want skills in you know, superstars, but they really think it's pointless if the candidate doesn't subscribe to their culture. So So Adam Grant actually found that out of these 200 startups at Silicon, he found that the businesses that hired for culture fit were significantly less likely to fail, so much so that their failure rate was actually 0% out of those 200 Silicon Valley companies. But he also recommends that people look at this approach as a cultural contribution instead of a culture fit. I'll get into kind of the negative things of describing people as a culture fit a little bit later. So you ask the candidate, how would you make our culture even better? So asking them, how are you going to contribute positively to our culture? It's not just that they fit into your culture, it's that they may challenge you. They may, you know, challenge you to make your culture even better, and that's kind of what you should be focusing on. Like if culture is a big thing that you're going to be hiring on, seeing what someone, I'm sure people have in their interviews have been asked, like, so what will you bring to the table for our company? It's kind of along those lines of that question. So anybody have any questions? Realized I was going really fast. So before we get into this, so after that whole process, you have your first employee or first or second employee. So you really want to, like I said, back to the onboarding, the importance of onboarding, you really want to invite them onto the team. So they could simply, you know, be a member of the, you know, an employee for your company that you give directives to, and they give you, you know, they give you the results and they punch in and punch out. But it's really important to invite them on the team and see like kind of like what their vision is for their own career and how the time at your company can kind of help them forward. Because then they know that you care about their professional development. Not necessarily that you want them to leave the next best opportunity, but you want to help them get to that next best opportunity when the time's right. So this topic will be interesting. So I don't know how many people who's been to like a diversity and inclusion like workshop or have spoken. Okay, cool. So does anyone have any ideas of like why we should care about diversity and inclusion in the workplace?
Yes, because well, the main thing with diversity and inclusion is just we tend to hire people we like, and I actually talked to a guy who's HR manager who says but a lot of people forget about hiring people that tend to disagree and have different opinions, because then you can have that contrast and they can challenge us to grow and try things that we never would have.
100%. Yep. And that's like one of the key things is when people think in diversity, they think like demographically diverse, which is also extremely important. But like you said, it's about the diverse of, you know, thoughts, the diversity of experiences that they may have had in their life that you haven't had. So actually there's some statistics. So again, there's a difference between diversity and inclusion. So diversity is a numbers game. So we hear a lot about quotas. We hear a lot about, you know, they want, it's important for board of directors to have like a 50-50 split, for example. So diversity is a numbers game, which is awesome to set quotas if you feel like that would be beneficial. But inclusion is really about impact that the company has, you know, internally in the company and also in the community as well. So just some stats. I'm sure you guys have seen this before. Diverse companies perform 33% better than the norm, and Forbes' best workplaces for diversity enjoy 24% higher revenue growth. So a lot of, like, you guys are probably like, okay, cool. Like, how do they actually get that? So there's kind of three. I kind of saw diverse companies as three different ways. So it reflects society. So when it reflects society, so for example, when we think of Niagara is pretty diverse in even income, like household incomes, in where people, you know, if there's newcomers, where they're immigrating from, students as well. There's a lot of age diversity. You know, there's a lot of gender identity diversity. So this way, when you're reflecting societies in your company, and again, this is really, I'm trying to get you guys to think big picture. Obviously, like in your first hire, it's not gonna, like, obviously you should have this kind of lens on it. Similar at the beginning when I was saying on top of your business plan, you should have an HR plan, and on top of your, you know, hiring strategy, you should have also a lens of being diverse and inclusive as well. But you'll be able to adjust to changes in the market easier and kind of have a better lay. It's similar to like our elected officials. Like obviously we want our elected officials to reflect, you know, the people in the community. And then on top of that, it also leads to product development and new markets. So when you understand, when you have a diverse workforce, you actually understand pain points of audiences that you would never have thought of before. So for example, even with like construction, maybe someone grew up in a household where one of their parents had some sort of physical disability and they need a ramp up to their house. Like that's a really good outlook to have, and especially construction, of making like inclusive designs, for example. A lot of products realized that they weren't being inclusive with people that had certain disabilities, of people that had certain, even there was a company that had like a hand sensor, blow dry, soap dispenser, and it actually didn't recognize people with darker color skin. So like if for example myself, if I did that, they wouldn't recognize, they only recognize white hands, for example. And they didn't know that until they brought someone on their team and they're like, this doesn't work for me. Like we can't put this out in the market. It doesn't work for everyone that would be using this product. So again, it's broadening the perspective of exactly the audience that you are going in. And then you get, after all this, you get more creative and profitable. So back to the kind of diversity of thought. When you have people around the table that aren't going to think just like you, there's you know, there's a lot of power in that. So there's what's his name? He started LinkedIn. Reid Hoffman. So he was in a podcast, and he told the host, he's like, yeah, when I was hiring, I wanted a whole bunch of nerdy guys that liked playing video games and liked doing this because they were all like me, and you know, that's what you need to do to build a business. You need someone that is like yourself, which there's some validity in that, but also who else is like him? Like, you know, other nerdy white males are like him. So again, he wasn't getting a lot of people to the table with, again, obviously he made one of the successful social media platforms, but still in reality, when you are building a company, it is important to understand that like diversity of thought and diversity of experience is what we should be focusing on. And it really helps companies, you know, grow quicker and also grow more uniquely as well. Awesome. So yeah, so for example, all of us have biases. So a lot of us, like, people sometimes think that bias is a very negative word and that, you know, you're doing it in a malicious, mean way. But realistically, like, people have had bias since the beginning of time. And it's something that is, you know, very subconscious, and it's something that, you know, people need to be aware of. even when you're working for a company or when you are trying to lead a company. And even from resumes, like if your name is, you know, Molly or Connor, you have a 14% better chance of getting a call back on your resume than if your name is Shanice or Deshawn. And I have seen this firsthand with international students at Niagara College. A lot of them put out resumes as they need jobs when they get here, and a lot of times they have, you know, names that a lot of the business owners of Niagara aren't familiar with, and they're getting 0 callbacks. Like I knew someone from Nigeria that had more experience than myself and any of our classmates, and he was getting, you know, no callbacks even for like a Tim Hortons job. Again, I don't know what was going through the employer's mind, but it's something like that it is a very subconscious unbiased. It takes a lot of, you know, working to kind of get that. Yeah, so just quick hiring tips part 2 when it comes to, you know, making sure that you're valuing diversity in your hiring practices. So like I said before, when you go into an interview or accepting resumes, you need to prioritize the skills you're looking for before the interview. So again, when someone comes in, you're not really being swayed by anything else that may be a factor in it. Like you have, you know, this objective list of skills that you're looking for, and will this person meet it or not, regardless of anything else. Some people also use blind hiring methods, so they actually anonymize their resumes. So when people send in resumes, like no name, no photos, like you're just looking at the experience, the credentials. You know, they sometimes don't do any address on it either, so you don't know where that person lives. And they use standard evaluation systems, like I said. And then also job description. So depending on who you're kind of aiming, who your target employee is, words have a deeper meaning even in description. So I read that words like dominant and aggressive in job descriptions are actually more appealing to men because they're more positive descriptors for men than they are women. So when women would read your job description, they, you know, that doesn't appeal, words like that don't appeal to them, rather than passion and collaboration appeals to both men and women. But it's really interesting reading that and being like, because a lot of times people view the job descriptions differently. A lot of people, especially women, imposter syndrome, they'll read something and be like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do that, even though they may have years of experience. So just being aware, again, little things, and it's really depending on your sector as well, but little things like that can really make a difference. And diversify sourcing methods. So again, I naturally said all this earlier regardless, but you know, making sure that you're not just getting all of your candidates from referral points. You're seeking out different candidates from the post-secondary institutions and even going to employment centers as well and say, hey, I'm open to having one of your employment center clients like come in and interview with me and maybe get a shot at working with me. And learn how to value the journey as well. So like I said before, when you see gaps on a resume, you shouldn't necessarily just like shoot that person down. Everyone starts at different points. You know, everyone may go to university at a different time. Like I know I went to university right when I was 17, but I know some people that went to university when they were 23. So it's really, you know, you're seeing the different journey, and then reconsider how you define diversity and fit as well. So like we were saying before, diversity can be, you know, demographic, like physical diversity, but it can also be diversity of thought and diversity of lifestyle as well. And then also define, so what I was saying before, we should stray away from culture fit, because sometimes culture fit can mean people like me. So when you see, again, not consciously, it's not like you're a terrible person, you're like, okay, if you're not like me, you're not culture fit. It's more broader than that, I feel, for people. But when you look at culture fit, it really is like, you really are kind of judging the person rather than, you know, what they're bringing to the table. And like I said, it's more of a culture contribution instead of a culture fit. Awesome. So I'm gonna skip that. I'm gonna skip this video because I haven't realized how long I've been talking. So now, does anyone have any questions? That's the end. That's kind of the end of my formal presentation. And again, this was a really broad overview. If any of you guys are interested in, you know, actually seeing an example of a job description, actually seeing example of an HR plan, please feel free to contact me afterwards, or, you know, suggest the hope that she should have me in for another workshop, and I'll get into more nitty gritty. But again, since this is kind of like the first HR workshop of kind of like the year, I just wanted to do a really broad overview of changing the perspective of how people view HR strategically in their small businesses. So now, if you guys may, I kind of wanted to do a little exercise. We have a couple of flip charts that we can use as well. So I kind of want to get everyone to answer these kind of questions. We'll take like 10, 15 minutes, and then we can share them with the group. We'll probably stop the live feed, but what kind of culture do you want to create? So going back, I can bring up those past questions that I posed, and who is your target employee? So writing out exactly what kind of characteristics and soft skills your target employee has. How will this impact your business strategy? So similar to how Google, they're looking for people who are innovative, they're looking for people who are, intelligent and curious. How will that impact, how does that tie back into your business strategy? And then do the second last one, what kind of experiencing characteristics would contribute to your culture? So similar, so pretty much the first three. But do we have others flip charts that we can bring? Okay, so Hope's just we'll probably just put them up on the wall, or you can use one of the tables.